While the presentation is coming up, Namaskaram to all of you. I especially thank Professor Sampath Kumar sir. He informed me about this philosophy teachers meet happening here and requested me to present a paper. I am very thankful to him. So I am not from any academic background. That was not mentioned in the intro. I am a computer professional. I have interest in philosophy, literature, culture and other topics, and that's what brings me here. So in the august presence of scholars and professors, let me present my humble paper here. So the paper is titled Vedanta Siddhanta Samarasa, Philosophy of Tamil poet Thayumanavar. Let me start the paper with a nice poem, because he is a poet, also a philosopher and a sage. So the central question at the end of this poem that Thayumanavar poses: will this learning ever lead to mukti? Vittai yen mukti tarumo, he asks. But before that, he starts with a kind of statement, Kallada pergale nallavargal. He says, certainly they are the goodly ones that have learning none. What shall I speak of my fate, my intelligence, who though learned is possessed of wisdom none? As we know, many of our Indian sages are very humble and modest. So, in line with that, this is how he starts. And then he goes on to say, if the good people say the jnana path of liberation is an exalted one, I argue that karma path is all important. If someone argues karma is the important path, I turn around and say, oh, jnana is all important. If one learned in Sanskrit comes to argue, I speak of the exalted truths in Tamil. If Pandits learned in Tamil simply come, I smatter a few shlokas in Sanskrit. All this sounds very familiar to us, right? Most of us are argumentative type of this kind. Thus, confusing all, establishing nothing decisive, will this learning ever lead to mukti? Vellamal evarayum Maruttivida Vagaivanda Vittai Yen Mukti Tarumo. And this he addresses to what he calls a Siddhar Ganam, Siddha elite. Vedanta Siddhanta Samarasa Nannilai Petra Vittaga Siddhar Ganami, he says. Oh, though the Siddha elite of the divine light that has reached the Vedanta Siddhanta accord high. So this last line I have chosen as the title for my paper, as this summarizes the quintessential nature of Thayumanavar's philosophy. So as we see in this poem, so here is a sage, who is very learned, obviously, because he says he knows jnana, karma, Tamil, Sanskrit, everything, who is very good in tarka, but ultimately he poses this question, will it really lead me to liberation? So this positions him essentially as a seeker of mukti, a mumukshu, someone who seeks for liberation and freedom. So this is the essential philosophical problem or an existential problem for this poet. Let me give a brief life sketch before, for those who may not be familiar with this great personality. So he lived chiefly in the town of Tiruchirappalli in the 18th century. So during that time there was Nayaka rule. There were Tiruchi Nayakas, Madurai Nayakas and Thanjavur Nayakas ruling in many parts of Tamil Nadu. So this was a period, the 17th, 18th, 19th century in the history of Tamil Nadu. It was a period of wars, conflicts and political instability. It was a chaotic period in history. So during such a time period, Thayumanavar. He served as a minister at the court of Tiruchi Nayaka king, Vijay Raghunatha Nayaka. He had abundance of wealth, learning and fame. He was in a very powerful and influential position at the royal court. But none of this really satisfied his soul. He was the seeker of wisdom and liberation. So he became a disciple of Mauna Guru, living in the same rock fort temple. You can still see the ashram of Mauna Guru there. Then he became a sannyasi and he roamed around the precincts of the same city where he was coming on horseback as a powerful and influential minister. And then he became a wandering monk, traveled to many parts of Tamil Nadu, and he attained Mahasamadhi at Devi Pattinam near Ramanathapuram. So what Thayumanavar has left us is a corpus of about 1400 poems. Beautiful poems written in chaste and enchanting Tamil. They are compiled into collections under multiple headings by his disciple Arulayyar. And these poems are very popular, even for literary enthusiasts and those interested in philosophy and religion. The poems of Thayumanavar are the perennial source of wisdom and inspiration. So the collections are named beautifully: Paripurananandam, Mauna Guru Vanakkam. So that is like salutation to Mauna Guru. Karunakara Kadavul. Kadavul means Ishvara in Tamil. Anandamana Param. Chinmayananda Guru. Sukhavari means flood of happiness. Yengum Nirehindra Porul means the Antaryamin. That's what it means. Tejo Mayanandam, Siddharganam, from which I quoted in the beginning. And then there are these 2-line couplets which are very popular. Parapara, they are called Kanni in Tamil. Parapara Kanni, Paingili Kanni, Ennal Kanni. So these are some of his books. I have quoted just a few lines to give a flavor of his poetry before we enter into his philosophy. Parkumidam engum oru neekamara nirahindra paripurananandame. Oh, thou filleth all visible space in unbroken continuity. Thou, the bliss that is perfect, full. Karudariya chirchabayil ananda narthamidu karunakara kadavule. Thou, the God of compassion, fullness, that dances in rapture in the Chit Sabha, defying description. Ever siriyar, ever periyar, ever uravar, ever pagainyar, yadu munayandri yundo, igavaram irandilum uyirinu kuyiragi, yengum nirehindra porule. Who are small, who are great, who are friends, who are enemies? All, none but thee. Oh, thou the pervasive being that is life of this world and next. You see, these poems sounds very simple, very mystical. Some more on similar lines from the Kannis. Thou gave thyself to me and prevented me from going astray. If for that act of mercy, what profited thee that thou take me entire in return, my mother dear, O Parapara? Ennai kondu enna palan endai Paraparame, he asks. In another couplet he says, thou art the sweet nectar of bliss, overspreading in all directions, that gushes in my heart, O Paraparam. And in another poem he says, Ninjagame koil, Ninaive sugandam, Anbe manjananir, Pusaigolla varai Paraparame. My heart is the temple, my thought is the incense, my love is the water for holy bath. Come, receive my worship, O Paraparam, he says. So these again, outpourings of a pure heart. Let me go to a very more complex metaphor. This is the last poem before we, when I propose what his philosophical framework is. So this is the metaphor of Jnana Matta Gajam, the Jnana elephant. You know. So this is a salutations to his guru, where he says, filled with grace divine, you brought me up as a Jnana elephant of towering presence. So in this poem he is not very modest. You know, he knows the luster of his wisdom. He says, oh Guru, you brought me up as a Jnana elephant. And what is the nature of this elephant? Fragmenting the chains of desire to smithereens. Ase nigalathinai nirdhoolipada udari. Kicking off the stake of ego. You know, stake is that small stick in which the elephants are tied. So I am an elephant that doesn't remain bound in that staff, it kicks it and moves freely. So kicking off the stake of ego, filled with the mada of Advaita, Advida Madamagi, blowing out the 6 darshanas as in a stream through the trunk, like the way elephant playfully spills the water through its trunk, I spill the 6 darshanas. The Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa. You know, these are like playthings. Gazing intensely upward until the darkness of Pasha became a mere shadow underneath. Pasa irul tannil aழலென சுளித்து ஆர்த்து மேல் பார்த்து, swallowing the straying mind as balls of food and feeding on it to the full, just like the way elephant feeds on balls of food. I feed on my straying mind, tearing the resplendent veil of Maya to shreds, controlling by the shining gourd of Chinmudra, held in the hollow of thy palm, in the fragrant juice dipped in the waters of Chinmayananda bliss. Thus, so the Ankusha that controls the uncontrollable elephant here is the Chinmudra and the grace of the Guru. So, thus is the Jnana elephant. And then he salutes his Guru. Mantra Guruve, Yoga Tantra Guruve, Moolan Marabil Varu Mauna Guruve. He gives 3 epithets, you know, the Mantra Guru, Yoga Tantra Guru, which means the Guru is knowledgeable in all these sciences, but then he is Mauna Guru, who comes in the lineage of Moolan, Moola, the whole. So this is an example of a very complex metaphor. So what is really Thayumanavar's philosophy? So if you see his nature of poems, it has 3 elements. The outpouring of his own mystical experiences, obviously, and the struggles of a sadhaka, a spiritual seeker. There are many poems where he really very honestly and bluntly expresses that he is not able to control his mind. His mind is straying, his senses are going here and there. So the struggles of a spiritual sadhaka is another theme. And the third theme is the expressions of his philosophical outlook. In fact, all these 3 elements are beautifully interspersed in his poem. It just goes like a continuous flow. It's not fragmented. So what are his primary philosophical influences and references? There are 4 of them. So first is the Shaiva Siddhanta, which is like his home tradition. You know, he was born in the Shaiva Velalar community. So the traditional Shaiva Siddhanta practitioners of Tamil Nadu. So there are many mentions of the Nayanmars and the Meikandar, who is the great guru of Shaiva Siddhanta, and the concept of Pashupati and Pasha, the Shaiva Siddhanta, and there are hymns in praise of Shiva. And then there is a lot of Advaita Vedanta elements in his poetry, the Upanishads, the Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. He talks repeatedly about Atma Jnana and the veil of Maya. And then there are a lot of yoga references. The Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, and then the concept of bhumis like Bhoga Bhumi, Ajnana Bhumi, Jnana Bhumi, which comes from texts like Yoga Vasishtam. And then there are a lot of meditation guidances given in the poetry. And he also talks about Siddha traditions, the Tirumular, the Navanatha Siddhas, starting from Gorakhnath, and the 18 Siddhas of Tamil Nadu. So these are the 4 primary influences that are visible in his poetry. But he doesn't see any, conflicts or fragmentation in any of them. I mean, as we saw in the previous poetry, after all, 6 darshanas are something which he, spews out like water from the elephant's trunk. So he talks about this samarasam, which is philosophical unity. In the very first poetry I quoted in the last line. So samarasa literally means, rasa means essence, sama means same and equal. So it means essentially the same. So he says Vedanta and Siddhanta are essentially the same, expressing the same truth in 2 different languages. It is a word that indicates oneness. But unfortunately, it is often misinterpreted as a settlement of a conflict. Because in the Tamil language, when you say samarasam, you say modalla sanda irundhathu, appuram avanga samarasam aayitaanga. Meaning initially there was some fight and then they settled amicably. But this is not the language that Thayumanavar uses in his poetry. So the people who interpret it this way, they say that there was a big conflict between these 2 schools in the Tamil religious landscape, the Vedanta and the Saiva Siddhanta. They were warring with each other. And here Thayumanavar says that the conflict between them is settled, so it is like Vedanta Siddhanta Samarasam. I feel it is a very wrong interpretation. Samarasam just means oneness. And in Lalita Sahasranama, we have a name, Samarasya Parayana, which means the one who is immersed in oneness. So there is a philosophical unity in Thayumanavar's poems. And there is also philosophical continuity. This is not something which the Thayumanavar has invented, like as if it is like a separate philosophy or a sect. So this Vedanta Siddhanta Samarasa is a recurring theme in the Tamil religious scape. The Kumaragurupara Swamigal, who lived a century before Thayumanavar, he speaks a very, very beautiful metaphor where Veda is a tree and there are so many leaves and branches which have sprung from this tree, and Vedanta is the sweetest fruit of this tree, and Shaiva and the Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy is the nectar inside that fruit. So this way he harmonizes the entire philosophical tradition of India. And Ramalinga Vallalar, who came 1 century after Thayumanavar, he called his way as the Samarasa Suddha Sanmargam. He again uses the word Samarasa here. And V.O. Chidambaram Pillai, the great freedom fighter and the Tamil Shaivite scholar, so he wrote a beautiful commentary for Sivajnana Bodham, one of the defining texts for Shaiva Siddhanta. So in the concluding remarks, he says that I studied this text, intense text, meticulously, and in the end, my conclusion is that Vedanta and Siddhanta are essentially the same. Vedanthamum Siddhantamum ஒன்றே என்பதே யான் இதனின்று கண்ட முடிவாகும். This is what he wrote. So I spoke about philosophical unity, which is samarasa, and there is also harmony, which is samanvaya. So samanvaya is harmonizing the conflict. What are the conflicts? Yoga versus bhoga, householder versus monk, grihastha versus sannyasa, active life versus contemplating life. And there is always, the karma, bhakti, jnana, which is greater. So in the very first poem that I quoted, so there are always these conflicts among the seekers of wisdom and philosophy. But he harmonizes everything so beautifully, saying that each has its value, but ultimately it should lead you to liberation. So this kind of harmony, samanvaya, is very much taken up by Swami Vivekananda in his practical Vedanta ideas, Sri Aurobindo in his integral yoga concept. and Subramanya Bharati, the great nationalist poet. So he acknowledges the influence of Thayumanavar. In fact, he greatly reveres Thayumanavar in many of his poems. In one poem he says, Iravai Tamilodu Iruppai ni. He says, as long as Tamil lives, O Thayumanava, you will live, he says. And then Swami Chidbhavananda, a great sage, educationist and acharya. So he has written very elaborate commentaries on all the poems of Thayumanavar, where in many places he brings parallel to the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and other Vedantic texts with Thayumanavar poems. So this is the nature of the beautiful philosophy of Thayumanavar. So I conclude my talk with another nice poem where he says, limitless indeed are the bounds of desire. Well, they may be rulers of all land, still they aspire to be master of all seas. Well, they may possess hoards of gold to rival Kubera, the king of Alakapuri, yet they'll wander about seeking the alchemic secret of turning base metal into gold. Well, they may have lived a life full of years, yet they will pine in search of Kayakalpa, the elixir of life. When you come to think of all these things in depth, they but end in eating full and sleeping well. He says, எல்லாம் யோசிக்கும் வேளையில் பசிதீர உண்பதும் உறங்குவதுமாக முடியும். Ultimately, this is all it is. Enough is enough. உள்ளதே போதும். Grant me that mindless pure state which prevents me from the restless pursuit of I and mine, driving me in confusion from pillar to post. உள்ளதே போதும், நான் என குளறியே ஒன்றை விட்டு ஒன்று பற்றி பாசக்கடற்குள்ளே வீழாமல் மனதற்ற பரிசுத்த நிலையை அருள்வாய். பார்க்குமிடம் எங்கும் ஒரு நீக்கமர நிறைகின்ற பரிபூரணானந்தமே. So this is his prayer to Paripurananandam. With that, I conclude my talk. So the translations I have taken from this website. In fact, the entire Thayumanavar poems translations are available here. mountainman.com.au Thayumanavar. It's a beautiful translation. And thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. If there are questions, I can take them. And if there is time for that.